You want to know the sick truth. They thought you'd crawl. They thought you'd chase, beg, plead and perform just to get back into their good graces. That the moment they pulled away, your world would collapse. That you'd unravel the second they withdrew their attention, because that's how they conditioned you. To equate their validation with your worth. To see their silence as punishment. To believe their absence was your failure. But instead, you didn't chase, you changed. And that's the plot twist they never saw coming. Your avoidant ex was banking on your desperation. They were betting on the fact that you'd break the silence first. Because avoidants don't leave for clarity. They leave for control. Their silence isn't peace. It's a power play. And every breadcrumb they dropped, every maybe one day they hinted at, was designed to keep you on a leash. But the moment you stepped back, not with bitterness, but with stillness, you shattered their script. You didn't just go silent, you went sovereign, and now they're not confused. They're threatened. See, Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." And that's exactly what you did. You didn't argue, you didn't defend, you didn't stoop. You just disappeared into discipline, into peace, into self-respect. And that silence, the one they thought would humble you, ended up humbling them. Because nothing disrupts the avoidance illusion of superiority like your indifference. Let's call it what it is. Most avoidant exes don't expect strength. They expect surrender. They don't expect a healed version of you. They expect the hurt version they left behind. So, when you started showing signs of emotional self-sufficiency, when you stopped reaching and started rising, they had no blueprint. No backup plan, no control. And that, more than any text you didn't send, terrified them. Because here's the truth. You didn't just go no contact. You went no compromise. No more tolerating hot and cold confusion. No more breaking your own heart just to keep the connection alive. No more dancing for someone who's barely listening to the music. You pulled back not to punish them, but to protect yourself. And somewhere deep in their ego, they felt it. Not just the distance, but the difference. They thought your silence was a tactic. But now they're realizing it's a transformation. This isn't a phase. This is a shift. You're no longer orbiting their emotional mood swings. You've become the gravity they never thought they'd lose. And that unsettles them, because they know now you're not waiting. You're walking away, and every step you take without looking back rewrites your story and dismantles theirs. Napoleon once said, "Never interrupt your enemy when they are making a mistake. So let them stay quiet. Let them believe you'll come running. Let them think your silence means defeat. Because while they're stuck playing emotional chess, you're building a life where they're no longer even on the board." And that's not spite. That's strategy. So before we dive into the real reasons why your avoidant ex is shook, why they're secretly checking your page but saying nothing, why they're haunted by the fact that you didn't play your role, let me say this. Stay until the end of this video, because I'm going to break down exactly what they're thinking, feeling, and regretting right now. And by the end, you'll know how to reclaim not just your power, but your peace. If this message is hitting deep already, take action. Like this video to push this truth further. Subscribe if you're done with games and ready for growth. Share this with someone who needs to stop chasing closure. And join our channel membership to help us keep creating the content they don't want you to hear. But before anything else, Comment this one thing: I didn't chase, I chose me. Type it not to flex, but to confirm. You're done chasing breadcrumbs. You're done begging for clarity. You're done being predictable. This is your season of silence, strategy, and sovereignty. Let's go deeper. Stay focused. Key point 1. They expected desperation. You delivered detachment. Your avoidant ex had one assumption: that your identity was still tangled in them. They believed their absence would shake you, that you'd reach out just to check in, that you'd leave the door cracked open, hoping they'd return. Because that's the pattern they knew: push, pull, disappear, return. And you'd always be there, waiting, hoping, ready to talk. But this time, something was different. You didn't just resist the urge to reach out. You restructured your entire mindset. Your detachment wasn't coldness. It was clarity. And that clarity was deafening. You see, avoidant exes aren't prepared for someone who actually lets go. They're wired to expect emotional dependence, not emotional independence. They mistake your past devotion for future submission. But you flipped the script. You didn't panic. You paused. You pulled back. And in that pause, in that power, something cracked inside them. Because when the person they thought would never stop trying actually stops, the illusion breaks. Now they're not thinking, when will they text? They're thinking, why haven't they? Your stillness forced them to sit with a reality they didn't anticipate. That maybe you weren't as fragile as they believed. That maybe their absence didn't hurt you, it healed you. And that realization, it's not just shocking, it's threatening. Because avoidants don't fear being disliked. They fear being irrelevant. And when you didn't beg, you became unforgettable in a way they can't explain. Because you chose yourself. And that's the moment their regret began. Key point 2, they played silent games. But you gained loud power. Let's be real. The avoidant ex's favorite weapon is silence. Not peaceful silence, strategic silence. The kind that's laced with manipulation. They ghost not because they need space, but because they want you to react. They want you to panic, to question yourself, to lose sleep wondering what you did wrong. It's not about needing time, it's about needing control. Because to the avoidant, silence is currency. They go quiet to starve you of certainty, hoping you'll pay for it with your pride. And for most people, it works. Most people cave. They double text. They apologize for things they didn't do. They settle just to not be ignored. But you saw the game. And you refused to play. You didn't send the "I miss you" message. You didn't ask, "Are we okay?" You didn't dance for their approval. You sat in the discomfort. You embraced the uncertainty. And you owned your silence, not as a reaction, but as a response. Because here's what they didn't understand. When you choose silence out of power, it echoes louder than words. While they thought they were punishing you by disappearing, you were evolving, privately, intentionally, dangerously. Their silence was meant to trigger you. Instead, it transformed you. And now they're the ones sitting in the tension. They're wondering why you haven't reached out. Why you seem unbothered. Why you look better, sound stronger, and move differently. Because nothing confuses an avoidant more than this. You didn't need closure. You became it. Key point 3. They tested your worth, but you didn't take the bait. Here's the brutal truth. Your avoidant ex didn't just pull away to protect themselves. They did it to test you, to see how much pain you'd tolerate just to keep them, to see if you'd lower your standards to meet their fears. Because deep down, avoidants don't feel worthy of consistent love. So they test it to see if it breaks. They'll withdraw affection. Then watch. Will you chase? Will you blame yourself? Will you shrink just to stay close? It's not always intentional, but it is calculated. They wanted to see if you'd fold under pressure. If your love was real enough to survive their sabotage. They confused devotion with self-abandonment and hoped you'd prove them right by proving yourself wrong. But you didn't bite. You stopped trying to prove your worth to someone who wasn't even trying to see it. You didn't play the game where you have to beg to stay relevant. You withdrew your energy without apology. And suddenly, they didn't know how to read you anymore. You weren't angry. You weren't reactive. You weren't begging them to understand you. You just chose peace over performance. That was the shock, because they were expecting heartbreak, yours. But instead, they got silence, strength, and self-respect. And that's the one thing an avoidant ex never prepares for. Someone who realizes their value doesn't decrease because someone else failed to recognize it. Your worth isn't up for negotiation. Not anymore. Key point 4. They thought you'd wait forever, but you became unreachable. Your avoidant ex thought time was on their side. They thought they could disappear, do nothing, say nothing. And you'd just wait. Wait for a text. Wait for a sign. Wait for crumbs of attention just to feel seen again. Because in their mind, you were the constant, the reliable one, the safe one. So they pulled back, thinking you'd stay stuck. But something shifted. At first, maybe you did wait. You checked your phone a little too often. You replayed conversations in your head, searching for the mistake. You second-guessed your tone, your words, your silence. But eventually, something in you snapped. And it wasn't weakness. It was awakening. You realized that what you were holding on to wasn't love. It was a version of yourself that settled. And when that realization hit, you stopped waiting, you stopped wondering, you started walking, not to find someone else, but to find yourself. They thought their absence would keep you attached, but it's what finally set you free. And now? Now you're not just out of reach, you're out of their league. Because when someone finally realizes you're no longer standing still, that you've outgrown the waiting game, that's when the panic sets in. They scroll through your stories. They watch, they lurk, they feel that sinking pit in their chest. And they won't say it. But they know. The version of you that would have done anything for them is gone. Mantra moment. Type this in the comments. I'm not waiting. I'm walking into my power. Say it. Own it. Let it echo. Because the moment you stopped waiting was the moment you became untouchable. A key point 5. They thought you'd compete, but you didn't even flinch. Your avoidant ex might not say it out loud, but you know the type of moves they make. Post a story with someone new, change their status, suddenly active on dating apps, smiling in pictures that weren't there before. And why? Not because they've truly moved on, but because they want you to believe they have. It's emotional warfare. A desperate attempt to provoke jealousy, to trigger a reaction, to make you feel like you lost. They want you to spiral, to wonder, was I not enough? To start comparing yourself to the replacement, to re-enter their orbit just to prove you're still relevant. But you didn't flinch. You didn't watch their stories. You didn't stalk their page. You didn't try to compete with someone who was never on your level to begin with. Instead, you stayed still. And that stillness? It screamed confidence. Because when you're truly healed, you realize something powerful. They didn't replace you. They just recycled the pattern. And deep down, they know it too. They know the connection they had with you wasn't shallow. They know what you gave was rare. And they feel the absence of it, even while pretending they don't. But here's what hits hardest. You didn't compete because you already won. You won your peace. You won your self-worth. You won by walking away with your dignity still intact. And the moment they realized you weren't fighting for a spot in their life was the moment they started wondering why they ever risked losing you in the first place. You didn't just let them go. You let go of the need to be chosen. And that's power they'll never forget. Key point 6. They thought you'd break down, but you broke through. Avoidants thrive on emotional confusion. They create distance, then act surprised when you react. They turn cold, then say you're too emotional. They withdraw, then act like you're the one chasing. And it's all part of the same broken cycle. Get close, pull away, watch you fall apart. That's the moment they expected from you. That breaking point where you'd snap, lash out, or beg for clarity. They were counting on your breakdown to validate their detachment, to make them feel justified in leaving, to confirm their belief that relationships are dangerous and messy. But you didn't crumble. You got clear. You turned that pain into power. Instead of trying to fix what was never whole, you fixed your focus. You started showing up for yourself. You got back in the gym. You read. You cut off toxic energy. You learned to enjoy your own company without begging for someone else's crumbs. That kind of strength is intimidating. Not because it's loud, but because it's unshakable. And now, while they're stuck wondering how you moved on so quietly, you're not looking back. You're looking forward. To the version of yourself that's no longer performing for love, but embodying it. You didn't break down. You broke through everything that was keeping you small. And that's the version of you they never expected to face. Because nothing scares the avoidant more than this. The person they thought would fall apart without them, becoming stronger because they left. Key point 7. They thought you'd stay attached, but you outgrew the bond. Attachment is the illusion avoidants depend on. They need you to cling, even as they push you away. They want to feel wanted without having to show up. It's their safety net. Knowing you're still emotionally invested, even if they're emotionally absent. They build the bond just enough to keep you hooked, then slowly starve it, watching if you'll still hold on. And for a while, maybe you did. Because let's be honest, when you love someone deeply, detachment isn't a switch. It's a process, a painful one. But here's what they didn't calculate. While they were busy assuming you'd stay stuck, you were silently evolving. The energy that used to be tied up in analyzing texts, overthinking tone, wondering, did I do something wrong? All of that energy turned inward, toward healing, toward self-worth, toward growth. And one day, without warning, without drama, You just didn't feel the pull anymore. You didn't need their approval. You didn't need their apology. You didn't even need a final conversation, because the version of you who needed their presence no longer exists. You didn't abandon the bond. You outgrew it. And they can feel that shift, energetically, emotionally, spiritually. You're not the same. And that's the most haunting truth of all. They still think they know how to access you. But the version they had access to? That door is locked, and you hold the key now. Because when you rise into a new level of self-respect, you don't go back to patterns you had to heal from to survive. You don't return to the cage once you've tasted freedom. Let this sink in. They thought you'd beg. They thought you'd wait. They thought your silence was temporary, but instead of crawling back into the same cycle, you walked out of the fire reborn. No begging, no breakdowns, just a calm, quiet rebuild they never saw coming. Because the truth is, when you finally stop chasing, you stop needing closure. You become it. And that's the plot twist that flips their entire ego upside down. You're no longer emotionally available on demand. You're no longer the safety net they can fall into when the world goes cold. You've become the person they thought they could keep on hold, and now you're untouchable. But here's where it gets deeper. If you're ready to take it to the next level, to not just ignore your avoidant ex, but to silently destroy the control they thought they still had over you, then don't miss the next video. How to break an avoidant ex's control without contacting them. We're going to expose the psychology behind power shifts, show you how to flip the dynamic without sending a single message, and make your silence do the talking, permanently. So hit that like button if this message hit hard. Subscribe if you're done letting people confuse distance with power, and join our channel membership to support this movement of healing, clarity, and taking your damn power back. Comment this mantra below if you're claiming your peace today. I didn't lose them. I found me. Say it with your chest, not to prove anything to them, but to remind you that your peace is non-negotiable now. I'll see you in the next one. And trust me, that's when the real shift begins.